welcome back to Psychedelics today, everybody. This is your host, Kyle Buller. Joe won't be joining me on this interview, so it'll just be me. For this interview, I am chatting with Duli Wilkins, a.k.a. the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. Duli and I actually met back in 2015 when Symposia hosted an event, and it was one of their first kind of conferences with their storytelling event, and it was really cool. I got to share my story and got to hear Duli's story there, and I remember him starting it off it was kind of really shamanic, and it was really cool. And yeah, we connected after he shared his story. I really enjoyed it. I felt like there was a lot of I could resonate with what he was sharing with, and so it was really cool to reconnect with him a few years later after this to record a little bit about his work. In this interview, we kind of chat about how he got into psychedelics and his interest in psychedelics, and also we dive into the topics of people of color in the psychedelic community. This is an important topic that keeps coming up in our world, and so I think it's really important to highlight this topic and get the conversations out there and kind of learn about how people of color are doing this work in the community. It's so important. So yeah, Duli does a lot of interesting work. Reiki practitioner, master, studies all sorts of different things. Has worked with ayahuasca. We wanted to chat about the bufo toad and a little bit of his work. I think he's about to go down to Costa Rica to study, become a Kambo practitioner. Hopefully we'll have him back on the show to talk a little bit more about his experience with Bufo and Kambo, something we wanted to dive into, but I also thought highlighting the topic of people of colors and exploring that topic was pretty important. So yeah, I really hope everybody enjoys this episode with Duli Wilkins, a.k.a. the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. And just some reminders. We actually just released a free course called Introduction to Psychedelics 101. You could find that at psychedelicstoday.teachable.com. So it's actually part of our Navigating Psychedelics Lessons on Integration and Self-Care course. But so you'll get a little bit of the intro to that course in this free course. We go over what psychedelics are, a little bit of the etymology, what some of the substance are, and some harm reduction techniques and some tips, and just some overall safety. We think this information is pretty important to get out there, so that's why we are offering this free course to folks. And you'll get some emails with the course as well, so check it out, psychedelicstoday.teachable.com, and it's the Introduction to Psychedelics 101. And I think we also included a free master course in there too. So if you sign up, you'll get to hear Elizabeth Gibson's story on her work with holotropic breathwork and integrating that for the past 20 plus years. Actually, yeah, I've been actually in Vermont at the Gibsons helping them out with some breathwork stuff. And I think Lenny just said they're on 24 years of hosting holotropic breathwork retreats. So they've been doing this work for quite a while, and they are a wealth of information. You could also, if you do sign up for the Introduction to Psychedelics course and like it and want to kind of dive more into the realm of self-care and integration, you could sign up for our other course, Navigating Psychedelics Lessons on Self-Care and Integration. Great way to support the show. We also have a Patreon if you want to support us that way. Every little bit counts and keeps the light on. You know what? Another great way to help support the show, if supporting it through our courses don't work for you, is share our content. Maybe pick a podcast you really like or a blog article that really resonates on our site, and just share it around your network. Share it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever that is. Just any way to help get the word out about what we're doing we're super grateful, appreciative, and the best way to support the show and help this show grow. And I think that's it on our end. So I hope you enjoy this show with Duli Wilkins, and we'll catch you on the other side. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Psychedelics Today. This is Kyle, and I'm joined here with Duli Wilkins, a.k.a. the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. Did I get that right? Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Duli. I'm really excited to dig into your work.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure is mine, man. Thank you for inviting me on your show, man. I've watched some of your interviews, and it's really awesome work that you're doing for the people, man. So it's going to be a real good show, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And so we connected at Symposia a while ago. It was, I think, 2015, and you gave a really powerful talk there about the work that you've been doing in Boston and your shamanic practice. Do you want to give a little bit of background about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm from the Boston area, born and raised. Actually, I'm from the Roxbury area, which is an inner city in Boston, and man, I have to give credit to my parents first and foremost. They're the ones that really got me into a lot of the stuff that I'm into right now. My dad, he used to play jazz music, and he actually met a lot of famous jazz musicians over his time, including Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad even got a chance to play with the famous jazz musician Pharoah Sanders. So, yeah, my dad was always into the music scene. He taught me from a very young age that sound and frequency can be used as a tool for healing. So, I always would see all these records around the house. And so I was introduced to a lot of different sounds early. And like John Coltrane was a special, for him and his wife, a special person to my heart in regard to music, because John Coltrane was traveling the world and studying with musical masters around the world to show how we could use sound as a tool for spiritual enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So that was my dad. He had us doing yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong as kids, and into microbiotics, Ayurvedic healing, all that shit when we was growing up. So we was like the black sheep of the neighborhood, because even though I grew up in this very enlightening type of household, as soon as I would step out my home, I lived between two warring projects. And and even though I again was brought up with a lot of this very spiritual, metaphysical type of things, it was like my early teens, like I think I was 11, 12. I was just going to an after school program at the time. And I didn't know anything about gang activity and stuff at that age. And, I remember these guys came up on me and, they said, I guess I had the wrong hat on. I had a Raiders football scully on. And my grandmother, she didn't know about gangs either. A lot of my family from down south and stuff. And so she was just trying to give me something warm to cover my head for the winter, And these guys came up and hey, you're down with so-and-so. And I'm like, what? What's going on? And then, I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? And next thing I know, they're beating the crap out of me, and I'm 11 and these guys had to be like 17, 18 or whatever. So they're beating the crap out of me. And I start to run for my life, Mm-hmm. And at that time, I seen this guy. He must have seen the whole thing happen, because he seen me running. He said, hey, you need some help? I jumped right in his car. He drove me to the nearest T station. And, I grew up, grandma saying, hey, don't talk to strangers. Don't get in no one's car. You don't know. I was like, I forget all the rules of what grandma said at this moment. Yeah. I'm going to jump in this goddamn car and get out of here, So, so a lot of things start to change after that for me, man. A lot of things started to change, man. I just seen a lot of things, man. A lot of my friends were into the gang life. Some of my friends, sold drugs, you know what I mean? I'll never forget one of my good friends at the time, it was a place down in Boston called the Combat Zone. And down there, it was near Chinatown. And it changed now. It's not the Combat Zone, what it wasn't like it was in the early 90s and the 80s and all that. But it was nothing but just drugs everywhere down there, prostitutes, pimps. And I remember I was down there with my friend, and he was selling crack. He was like 13. I think he was 12. I think I was 13 at the time. And he wanted me to sell crack. He wanted me to help him sell crack that day. So I was on the strip there serving the fiends, serving the addicts that day. And I never forgot, it was this one guy came up to me, and I was holding some of the crack in my hand, and he wanted some from me. And so I'm making this sell for him. And he gives me all this change in my hand, a couple of dollars, all this change. And my friend comes up to him and smacks the change out of this guy's hand, and says, "This ain't no motherfucking bank." You know what I mean? And I was like taken aback because I just grew up differently, man. Even though I was around a lot of that, I was told to respect my elders. So at that point, it was like a real shocker for me because, this guy's like 11 or 12 and he's speaking to a grown man, probably in his 40s or something like that. And I never did that again. I'd never, I was there. I didn't, just hanging out with my friend. And but that's the life he was living. And I refused to go down to the combat zone with him to do that again, because I just didn't like the feeling of that. It was crazy. And but I realized that he was living a lifestyle he was living because his mother was a crack addict. So it becomes like a vicious cycle, man. Yeah. Excuse me if I'm spitting, because I just took this rappy, y'all. Hoppy is very good for getting all that mucus and stuff out. So yeah. But yeah, man, it was, my dad, went to Woodstock, seen Jimi Hendrix play live. And, my mom, she was very mystical as well. She graduated from Mass College of Art, and she was really into this very abstract painting. So both of my parents have been a big role in my life in regard to even looking into spirituality, meditation, all that. My mom, unfortunately, was labeled with schizophrenia, so I didn't get a chance to really live with my mom. And we could talk about that, the whole connection between shamanism and schizophrenia. I think that's a good connection there.
It's really interesting. There's a lot there, yeah.
It's a lot there, man, So, yeah. But, yeah, that's kind of how I grew up. And I think around 16, 17, I got heavily into Tai Chi and Qigong. And it was an older guy from the neighborhood that brought me to the classes. And that allowed me to kind of channel my energy. It allowed me to kind of deal with some of the anger that I was experiencing because of the things that I was seeing around my neighborhood.
Of like living in those two worlds of...
Yeah. So the Tai Chi and the Qigong really helped me because I was a very depressed teenager. Even though everyone that knew me, I was always the one to make everyone happy and getting everyone up, keeping the vibration high. But as they say, when no one's around, the clown that cries when no one's around or whatever. Yeah, that was me. I always wanted to make everyone happy, but I didn't know how to find really the happiness within myself. And Tai Chi and Qigong was a great tool for that. I mean, it allowed me to go deeper within myself and kind of release a lot of the tension and a lot of the pain that I was holding on to. And then later, I started to work at a metaphysical bookstore called Unicorn Books. It was in the Cambridge area, and that helped me out a lot because working there, I was just meeting so many wonderful people. At the time, I was meeting famous authors coming out of town, doing book signings, and we had workshops there too. So when I was working there, that's when I first got introduced to Reiki as well. And it was a woman I worked with named Janaki, who was the first to initiate me into Reiki. And then from there, I started learning other forms of energy healing as well. Like I became a Shambhala multidimensional healer. I went into Rising Star healing system. I started getting into pranic healing and all that. So and from there, it just things just started growing and developing. And when I got to college, I got a scholarship there, and I was studying art and theater. And that's when like the shaman path really started to come to me because
how did that come to you?
Yeah, it was a friend that gave me a mushroom, you know, and that's when the magic began. So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, man.
Yeah. Would you mind going a little bit into what that was like for you? Like that maybe
yeah, definitely. Well, before I took the mushrooms, I always smoked weed. That was my thing. And always been a weed smoker. I've been smoking weed or marijuana since probably 13. And but it's funny because I always had this sense that it was a sacrament, you know? So it was kind of hard for me to really smoke around a lot of my peers because a lot of them just wanted to get high, personally, you know, get high, bug out and all that. And don't get me wrong, there was times where I just wanted to get high and bug out too. But then there was a sense that when I would smoke the weed, that I was brought into these very deep states of mind. And I couldn't deny that, you know, and me being a very empathic person, my empathic abilities heightened more when I smoked weed. So it was very hard for me to be around a lot of people when I smoked because I would feel their energy and feel certain things so strongly with them. So I knew internally that intuitively that there was something, a connection with weed or a connection with marijuana and it being it used as a sacrament or used in some type of spiritual way. And when I started even doing the research with the people that use weed as a tool for spirituality, I started getting deeper into the teachings of Rastafari, you know, the Rastafarians and them using marijuana as a sacrament, and also the Shivites, those from India and the sadhus, and how they would use marijuana as also a tool for their meditation. So I knew there was something to do with teaching plants. I heard of this term shamanism before, but it never really called me until really the mushroom. When I got the mushroom, it was interesting because, you know, in the hood or quote unquote in the inner city or the Black community, the time where I was growing up, you didn't really see Black people really dealing with a lot of teaching plants, fungi, or entheogens, psychedelics. That wasn't really something that you would see from the Black community. So the mushroom thing was very new for me, you know? So I was like, you know, Black folk, we usually just smoke our weed or drink our beer and that's it. So anything outside of that, we're like, oh, what the fuck is that? You know? So that was kind of my reaction, was like, mushroom? I don't know about that. But I checked in with myself. I checked in with my higher self. And I was like, okay, should I take this? And something inside me said, yeah, go for it. And I was like, and something inside me is like, hey, it shouldn't be that bad. You know, you put mushrooms in your spaghetti and your pizza and shit. So, so it shouldn't have to be that bad, you know?
Yeah, a little different, but yes.
Yeah. Little did he know that it would be very different. You know what I mean? And then growing up, you know, I didn't have Nintendo growing up, but my cousins, they had. So Mario Brothers, you know, these references, I'm like, okay, Super Mario, he got super when he ate that damn mushroom. So it must be something to this. So, so that was my attitude at first. But yeah, I took the mushroom and the first time was crazy. I was like, yeah, because I didn't know, again, me being very empathic. I was in a party setting. It was my birthday. And I was like, it was funny. First thing was like my friend, one of my best friends, Anthony, or we call him Ant Dog. Ant Dog, he took it with me too. So, and my homeboy Niz. So the thing is that my friend Ant, I seen him just looking at this painting in the corner. Everything was okay at first. At first I was feeling little sensations, energetic sensations and stuff. And then I see my friend over there just staring at this painting. So something told me, I was like, man, maybe go check on my friend Ant because he looks like he's kind of out there right now. You know what I mean? So I go over there and I go check on him and I'm like, hey, Ant, you know, are you all right, man? Is everything all right? And he's like, yeah. everything's all right, man. But don't look over there. I was like, don't look over where? And he's like, that guy over there, don't look. He's like, he doesn't have any eyes. So I was like, yo, this guy is tweaking. I was like, yo, this guy is out there right now. So I look at the guy over there. I was like, man, he has eyes, man. He's like, no, man. He doesn't have any black stuff in his eye. He doesn't have any pupils, man. It's all white, man. It's, you know what I mean? So I was normal until I start interacting with my friend. He starts getting me paranoid all of a sudden. Right?
How much did you guys take? Do you remember?
I think I took 5 grams that day.
Wow.
Yeah. My first time, 5 grams. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go all the way in, right? So, and plus, I think I was smoking and drinking a lot too, and all that stuff didn't help either. Yeah. So I go in the other room, and at the time, I had a friend of mine. This was when I was working still at the metaphysical bookstore. I had a gentleman there that was into the Orisha system. And the Orisha system, that's a spiritual system from Nigeria, or what they would call Ifa, you know? So the Orishas would be considered like the archetypical deities associated with the elements. So he gave me these spiritual Orisha beads. And I'm just sitting down, just chilling. And next thing I know, I see my beads on my neck moving by themselves, right? So I was like, oh, shit. What the hell is this? You know, so I take my beads off. I'm like, yo, this is crazy, right? And then the next thing that started to interest me was like, I was seeing things happen before they was happening. So in my mind's eye, I would see my friend get up, get from his seat, go over there, talk to this guy, come back, sit down. I would see this in my head. And then like 2 or 3 seconds, it would actually happen, you know? So I was like,
you're kind of like foreshadowing it.
Yeah. I was like, what is this? Am I tapping into some time travel stuff or what is going on here? So that started to bug me out. And then there was a point where I started, you remember on The Matrix, where Neo got enlightened and he started seeing all these numbers everywhere, code or whatever. Yep. That happened to me the first go round. I didn't see numbers, but I seen these geometrical patterns that it looked like some type of square that would go in and in and in and in. And this symbol was covering everything. You know, I looked at my body, my whole body was covered with it. I looked at the sky, the whole sky was covered with it. And the only thing it reminded me of, it was like, it reminded me of like a quilt, like it was some of your grandmother's quilt or something. But it seemed like I was seeing the fabric of reality. That's how I interpreted it. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then the last thing that really kind of tripped me out was, at that time, I was studying a lot on UFOlogy and galactic history and stuff like that. And so I had this sense of it, or feeling that it was a UFO above the apartment building where we was at. And that shit just bugged me the fuck out. So that's when I started really getting paranoid. And one of my other friends that didn't take the mushroom was he kind of like picked up on my mannerism, and he's like, man, I think we should get going. And I thought it was an intricate plot. And it was funny, the guy that I was talking about just called me. He was just trying to call me on an alarm.
Oh, no way, that's weird.
Crazy, right? I thought it was an intricate plot that my friend was in cahoots with the aliens and that he was going to help them take me on the goddamn UFO ship. So,
the paranoia starts to sink in. You're like,
he's trying to get me in the car. I was like, he's like, we got to go. I was like, no, I'm not fucking going anywhere with you. So that was funny, man. When I got over that, when I finally started coming down, you know, everything was cool. But I couldn't deny that it was something there. You know, I didn't like the feelings that were coming up that was a little paranoid and all that. But I decided to take it the second time. And the second time I said, I'm going to deal with all these fears that came. You know, I was like, I'm going to deal with this stuff. And the second
what made you
time,
take it the second time? Just because like the experience was interesting, or it was just like so profound that you're like, I need to kind of go back in there and see what that was all about?
it was interesting. And also the type of guy that I am is like, I like challenges, challenges. So it's like, if I see there's something that I have to work on with myself, I'm going to just like, I'm a nut like that. I'm going to just jump right into the ring and we're going to get it going. So that's how it was for me. I was like, you know what, whatever stuff that was bothering me, I'm going to examine that and I'm going to look at that. So that was kind of like the sole type of motivation behind it. And I remember going to this place in Boston called Franklin Park. It's a big park. And it's funny, I went there when the sun was setting. And I think I did 5 grams again. I'm not sure if it was 5 or a little more. But the second time was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was very enlightening. And I remember in the beginning of it, it was like, first of all, I seen my shadow. And my shadow looked like it was pregnant. I was like, what the hell is this? And then all of a sudden, it felt like I was giving birth to something. It felt like I was giving birth to something on another realm or dimension. You know what I mean? I mean, man, Kyle, I mean, my legs were shaking. I was like doing this contraction type of shit. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And after that, I remember the sense of smelling something like burning flesh. And I felt this negative like energy. And I said to myself, I was like, yep, they're here. I'm gonna have to battle this type of negative energy. I'm gonna have to deal with this, because I kind of take the perspective that when you deal with your psyche or you deal with these archetypes, these is not so much, these things can be outside of you, but I also think a lot of these things
internal.
Are internal processes. And especially I've learned that much more, especially working with the Bufo. That Bufo definitely highlights that. But so I was like, okay, it's time to go battle within myself. And at that point, the frequency, the energy just got so high that it felt like I had an out-of-body experience. And I must have battled whatever I needed to battle, and I won the battle. And because at that point, I heard it sounded like drumming from the heavens. It sounded like drumming in like a horn, like a celebration of some sort. And at that point, it felt like what in yoga they call it felt like a Kundalini experience. At that point, I felt all this energy coming up my spine. And I felt like just massive energy come down through the crown of my head. And at that point, this was the middle of the winter, by the way. At that point, my body, my whole entire being was totally blissed out. And at that point, my whole body heated up. So I had this winter coat on, everything. I took my winter coat off, my sweater off, and I'm walking around now just in a t-shirt. I wear glasses at that point. I felt like I could see better. I threw the glass. And I had even an expensive tuning fork thing. I couldn't believe I left all this stuff behind. It was crazy. I had this tuning fork set that I would use for healing, right? I left everything behind. I was like, I'm so free. And at that point, I'm walking through the streets just in my t-shirt and I'm singing songs to God. I'm just saying, the Most High is beautiful. We're all beautiful. And I remember I seen this lady, she was there with her boyfriend or whoever, and she looked at me and this look on her face was like, this guy is nuts. I think she said, he needs a psychologist or something, right?
Rule number 1, don't leave the house.
So, at that point, I'm walking through the city and I'm just singing and everything is brand new. I mean, my saliva, it's like I'm tasting it for the first time. Everything, like the wind, everything was so brand new for me. And it felt like I was a child. It felt like I was a brand new child. And at that point, I remember I seen this tree and it looked like a female tree. It looked like it had a yoni type of vagina type of thing. And I said, this tree is trying to tell me that it wants to initiate me. So I put my and it's between the trees leg type of thing. And I was like, whoa, and and then I walk off and I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful. So at that point, I'm having all this mud and dirt on my head. And I'm at that point, I'm in college. So I'm walking back to the campus and I see this beautiful girl that I really liked at the time. And I just walked right up and kissed her. And I said, it's so beautiful. And then I just hit the floor and then I walk into my dorm and I start crying at that point, because at that point it was so overwhelming, the experience. And I said to myself, no one would believe me. No one would believe me that this just happened. So that was an amazing one for me, the second one. And of course, I've had many, many journeys with the mushrooms ever since after that,
Yeah. Something that came up a little bit earlier was when you were talking about being exposed to the mushrooms, but, the Black community really doesn't have a history of using this. What was that like for you? Or what is that like for you? Is that still the case? To be involved in this work or just be interested in it when, maybe the people around you aren't, or they don't really understand it?
Yes. Well, I think the thing about that is that I think things are changing, Definitely. I think more people, not only Black folk, but just people across the globe are becoming more aware of the benefits of teaching plants and fungi and all that. And things are changing, And I see it changing. One person I think that's spearheading that and making that awareness really available for people is Baba Kalindi, the elder. I call him the mushroom master. And I met Baba Kalindi the first time when I met you in 2015 at UMass Amherst over there. And when me and Baba Kalindi met, it was just so... when I met him, that's when I realized that Black people have a legacy in regard to the teaching plants and the fungi, the ethogens. It's a long history in Africa with it. And I never knew that. So
with iboga or mushrooms or mushrooms,
definitely mushrooms and other type of teaching plants and fungi. For instance, even in King Tut's tomb, they found the blue lotus flower, and also found cocaine. But, I've learned that even ancient Egypt, or the proper name Kemet, I learned that ancient Kemet was a psychedelic culture. You know what I mean? And, when you think of Nubia, when you think of Egypt or Kemet, the blue lotus flower, that was a secret rite initiation process that was associated with Osiris or Osar. So they would bury you into and you would eat the flower, and you would take the flower and you would go on your psychedelic journey. It was an initiation, something similar to the Black Panther. I don't know if you've seen the Black Panther movie, but the character, you haven't seen it yet?
No.
Oh, it's a dope movie. Definitely check it out. One thing that I really liked about the movie was that they showed in the movie psychedelics. They showed in the movie what they call the heart-shaped plant. And in the character, the Black Panther, T'Challa, it shows that this was a thing that was passed on from one Black Panther to the next, that they would have to take this brew, which I would associate it as like ayahuasca or what have you. And in the movie, it shows how he takes the heart-shaped plant and he goes directly into the spirit world, And that's something I even seen a lot with the ayahuasca ceremonies that I help organize here in Boston. A lot of people of color that come, a lot of them are experiencing this medicine for the first time. And a lot of them report of seeing ancestors that have passed away. So I was so happy to see that part in the movie. But things are changing, brother. And the thing is that I think there's a resistance in the Black community per se when we talk about ethogens or psychedelics. And it's like that because of the history of drug use in the Black community. When you look at the crack era, in the 1980s, late 70s, 80s, I grew up, like I said, seeing a lot of people addicted to crack in the neighborhood. And when you do research, you understand that the CIA was responsible for bringing crack cocaine in the Black inner city communities, it's really fucked up. And people could see their own research and show that, hey, the CIA was directly involved with Freeway Ricky Ross. He was one of the main people supplying it from Nicaragua and stuff like that. This is right, as anyone could do the research and see. And before that, the whole heroin going on in the Black community from a lot of Vietnam vets that were coming home. So the Black community seen a lot of drugs that destroyed the community, that actually dismantled the community. And a lot of people in the Black community feel that that was a direct action by our own government to make it happen, to disable the community like that. That was actually done on purpose. So there's a lot of people that remember, and there's still people still trying to heal from that crack era and all that. So when you talk to Black folk, hey, let's look at ayahuasca or iboga or San Pedro or any of these things, it's kind of it's at a place of resistance because a lot of people's uncle, aunt, whoever was strung out, and the big thing is education, because you have to, my part in what Kundalini and what other people in the Black community that deal with these teaching plants and fungi, what we're trying to do is really just trying to bring education so people can know that there is a difference between what we call real drugs or synthetic drugs, crack, heroin, all these different things. There's a difference between that and what we call the teaching plants and the fungi that shamans, medicine men, medicine women been using for thousands of years. And I think when the Black community has more exposure and gets more education around that, then I think they'll be more receptive to it. And not just the Black community, I think people abroad, just across the board. I think it's changing because, again, when we had, my father going to Woodstock and all that, it was a great awakening happening, with the hippies and all that. We have to give credit to the hippies. We wouldn't have a lot of the vegetarianism, the meditation, the yoga, all that shit came in with them hippies, and we wouldn't have had that if that movement really didn't happen like that. But that was also shut down purposely by the government, and shut down through this whole war on drug campaign, the propaganda machine with the Nixon administration. And that's how it happened. And then gonna bring in CIA agents like Charles Manson and all that, and make it look like this hippie movement or this psychedelic movement is a dangerous thing. But it was by design to shut it down, because it was very easy for the government to kill leaders of people of color, like one of my aunts were a Black Panther. And it was very easy for them to shoot down like leaders like Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, any of these people. But the government didn't know what to do when it came to their own children waking up, these white kids waking up, and all of a sudden taking these teaching plants and these fungi and turning their back to the system, literally. Why are we paying for college? Like, why are we going to war? Like, what the fuck? Why are we even hating on our fellow brother over here just because he's Black? Our fucking grandfather is a racist prick. Like, fuck that. They was turning their back on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And because of that, they had to come up with a campaign of this whole thing, propaganda machine of this war on drugs. So across the board, we have to have a re-education of awareness to let people know that these teaching plants and fungi aren't drugs, that they're tools for spiritual development, healing, all kinds of things. You know what I mean? And I think more people will, Black, white, whatever color or nationality you are, I think more people are going to be more receptive to that when they especially have more medical backings behind it. And that's why I think it's amazing that you have like Johns Hopkins University, New York State, all these different places are in institutes and universities studying these psychoactive compounds and literally showing that on record the benefits of them, helping with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, all these things. So I think time, we just have to be patient, you know,
Patience is key.
And time will definitely bring things to the surface, and people will actually see there is benefit behind it, and they won't have this like negative connotation to it, or this stigma behind it, or this taboo surrounding these teaching plants and fungi. So I think it's just our role, wherever we are at in the world, to educate each other, educate the masses. You know what I mean? That's where it come in, and especially for the Black community. So I think it's going to definitely change. I see that also too with the younger generation, you know, some of the younger Black kids that are into the trap music and all that. It's very drug related, you know. They have the songs on talking about Molly and Percocet and all that. Yeah. So a lot of the kids are really into the pill popping, and I think they're searching for that experience, but I think they're searching in the wrong places. So I think it's key that even the rap music, the rap artists and all that bring awareness. If we're going to talk about altered states of mind, let's bring it from a more healthier standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. And something I could imagine you're probably doing a lot of education in this realm. I always see you do like Facebook Live videos and just, you know, getting out there and sharing information. Do you ever come into like any problems or resistance? Something that came up, we were chatting with Monica Williams over at University of Connecticut, and we just had an episode on race-based trauma and using MDMA for the PTSD and talking about like ancestral trauma and that stuff getting passed down, but also that, you know, maybe the Black community also has a resistance to some of the medical stuff as well from the history, you know, with like the Tuskegee studies down. And so like,
experiments,
and so is there like kind of like that paranoia when it comes to medical establishments, or like these studies coming out of like, do we actually really even trust this?
Definitely. That's why you have especially so many Black men being diagnosed with certain illnesses at later stages, you know, and it's because of that underlying distrust within the medical establishment. And let's be for real. I'm not putting down the medical establishment. No. It's part. And so, I mean, if you're gonna break a fucking leg and get hit by a car, your ass better go in.
I would not be here for Western medicine.
To the goddamn hospital, get yourself treated. Yeah. So it's a time and a place for everything. But we also do know that the pharmaceutical industry is a business. We also do know that a lot of these things that it comes to, like even these naturopathic doctors. I'm seeing so many cases of these doctors. Natural doctors dying, being murdered. You know what I mean? So it's a $300 billion industry yearly with the pharmaceutical industry. And if we have people that are well, no one's going to get paid. So I think people in general have a mistrust of that system, because we know a lot of it is geared on money and geared on making money, and not really looking at ways to really not put a Band-Aid on the situation, but literally help eradicate a situation. It's not geared to that. You know what I mean? Especially doing research along things along cancer and all that. People should definitely look up Dr. Sebi and other people who came forward and said, hey, I have the cure for cancer. I have the cure for AIDS. All these different things. So I think there's a lot of people that mistrust the medical establishment because of the history, like you said, the Tuskegee experiment and all that. In general, when we deal with epigenetics, for instance, or when we deal with ancestral memory, for instance, all right, this has come up, you know, in ayahuasca ceremonies. It has come up in healing ceremonies. I'll never forget, it was a woman that was an initiate of the Betwi tradition, which is in the Gabon, dealing with ibogaine. I remember she shared with me one of her experiences with the iboga. And she was taking the medicine and she time traveled. And she wasn't sure if it actually was a time travel experience or if it was her reliving one of her ancestors' experiences. All right. But regardless of the point, she's seen these Africans running through this sugarcane field, and they were trying to escape slavery. They were runaway slaves. And she said she knew without a shadow of a doubt that this was some type of ancient memory, you know what I mean, that she tapped into while she was on the Iboga. And shit like that is real. We have to really be aware of that, even in ceremony. Mm-hmm. We have to be aware that each of us have our own different type of things that we have to heal, or some of us have even our own type of different baggage. And how is that played out when it comes up for a person? You know what I mean? Because you want a person to be able to feel comfortable while they're going through their healing process. Mm-hmm. All right. So that's why I had some people in the Boston area, some people that literally wanted just to do ayahuasca ceremonies with just people of color alone, mm-hmm. you know, and some people just felt more comfortable doing that because of the things that they feel might come up for them, and they feel that they felt more safer being that. I had one shaman that was okay with that. I had another shaman that wasn't okay with that. The other shaman said, hey, you know, I don't segregate with anyone. I want everyone to be together to do this work. And if it comes up, it comes up. So I think it's no wrong or right answer. I mean, like sometimes you have women groups or even men groups that sometimes people feel more comfortable to be able to do certain healing. I mean, if a woman has you have a woman's group, I'm not gonna stomp my feet and be like, hey, you know, I want to be down, girls. Come on, let me in. No, I have to respect their fucking process. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not gonna put a wig on and a skirt and try to disguise myself to jump into the women's group. That's not gonna happen. You know what I mean? I have to respect their process. I think it's a time and a place for anything. Maybe as the women do their work amongst each other, maybe they might be more open when it's ready for them to be with the men and do their things. Who knows?
I agree. I think it's you know, to feel comfortable in those spaces to do that work where maybe somebody doesn't really understand it, and then, you know, start engaging more in other groups and other circles. But yeah, to feel that comfort, I think, is important sometimes, depending what you're dealing with, for sure.
Oh yeah, it's very important, man. I mean,
the safety is it's key.
It is key because people have to understand these things with the teaching plants, the fungi, all that. It's a very vulnerable place to be in. As you know, anybody that takes these things know that you're very open. You know, that's why when I talk to people in the spiritual circles and they say, "Oh, I'm conscious" or whatever, and I was like, "Well, I want your conscious ass to eat this mushroom over here." You know what I mean? Like, no, Duli, no. I don't know what might come up for me. No. Well, what you're telling me, my friend, is you don't know what might come up for you. What you're telling me is that you're scared of yourself. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dealing with the shadow material.
Yes.
But I would also say like time and place too, because that's presented. I mean, things like that have presented to me. I'm like, it's not the great time to do it. I know my process, and I know.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Sometimes it's not always a time to jump in the deep end of the pool. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You got to take your time. It's a time and a place for everything. I totally agree. But I do also know that if you want to make some real leeway with your own healing for yourself, to be able to do some work for the world and all that, you're going to have to go to places of discomfort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of course, we call that shadow work. Of course, we call that, you know, the dark night of the soul. You know what I mean? Of course, we, you know, in shamanism, soul retrieval and all that, you know, and that work is very needed. Mm-hmm. If a person really wants to walk around and be a more wholesome person, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people that I encounter, man, we have some people, especially within the New Age community, they want to stay on that fairy, airy shit. You know, unicorns and fairies, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm a very fairy unicorn type of guy, too. You can ask my wife. You know what I mean? There's times where I definitely want to chill with all the gnomes and earth spirits and all that. And they're cool. And all that, they spray you with some fairy dust and all that, you know, it's not wrong with that. But then there's times where I feel there's a sense of denial where people say everything has to be love and light, everything have to, and that is important. But some of those individuals that claim love and light all the time, they have never taken the steps to look at some of their shadow stuff. And we're all walking around with trauma, believe it or not. You know, I just living in this world. Coming out your mother's womb is traumatic.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's studies that people talk about that, especially the boys, the males that are circumcised. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Come on, man. You know what I mean? You come out your mother's womb, you're getting squished, coming through this little canal, this tunnel. You're like, and then all of a sudden you got to breathe. You didn't never breathe before. What's going on here? And then these guys with strange masks and bright lights around. You're like, who the fuck is these aliens? You know what I mean? And then somebody, you know, it's traumatic, even how we come in this world.
It is. And yeah, Joe and I, you know, we come from that Groff background of breathwork and the perinatal theory. And I've had plenty of experiences of like reliving birth trauma and understanding how that could be influencing my life still. You know, it's your first kind of like trauma, leaving this really comfortable place and having to go through this like underworld experience of being contracted and pushed through the canal. And I mean, it's a struggle of life and death. And, you know, you usually come out on the other side.
It's very true, brother. You know, so it's like we all carry some form of trauma of some sort or another. And even like the woman, like I said before, even having that memory with the Iboga experience, sometimes the trauma is even like from ancestors, you know, and even some of the trauma is past life stuff. So with this healing work, you're always digging and getting constantly refining yourself. You know, I've had a lot of past life experiences that I've seen, and I was fortunate to see some of them. But I'll never forget, it was one past life where my son died very young. And I remember in that past life, I was very heartbroken. You know, so we carry these things. And, you know, when you get into metaphysics or even occult information, they talk about things like the Akashic records, and it's just being attributed to your DNA, basically, and learning how to read your DNA. But all those experiences is stored in us, and they don't go anywhere. So, you know, like Bob Marley said, you're running and you're running and you're running away. You're running and you're running, but you can't run away from yourself. So you can't run away from yourself. You know what I mean? You can't fuck around. You could try all you want, but guess what? You're going to have to deal with yourself sooner or later. So that's what these teaching plants, these fungi, that's why I think they're the ultimate psychotherapists, you know? You know what I mean? Because we could deal with some people that dealt with psychotherapy for years, trying to get at the root of some of their stuff. And we know that if you get a good ass mushroom dose, put yourself in the right setting, get some good music or whatever, you could do a lot of work that you've been trying to work on for years. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of inner strength for someone to say, hey, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to take this. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the weak of heart. It takes a lot of courage. And that's why I commend anyone that's doing the work. And that's why I feel it's also important for people to have a good setting. You know what I mean? You know, be able to be like, hey, I got to be feeling comfortable at the ceremony or whatever. And I don't blame them, because you're going to be very open.
I agree with you 100%. Coming back to the unicorns and fairies, in some of the circles that you're part of, do you see a lot of people get caught up in that and not engaging in the shadow or some of that deep inner work? Or are you seeing a lot of like kind of spiritual bypassing?
Yes, I do. I see that a lot, man, unfortunately, man. And it's like anything else, man. People try to hide behind things. You know, I mean, so you see it in all the communities, even the psychedelic community. You know, you have some people that hide behind the psychedelics. And if it was the case for someone to say, oh, well, you know, and that's why I don't like dogma. You know, I'm not dogmatic, man. I don't say, hey, my path is the best path, because if you're doing that, you're just dogmatic, just like any other organized any other organization. You know, I seen that growing up sometimes. Like this person, oh, if you're not a Christian, your ass is going to hell. You know, if you're not a Muslim, you know, Shaitan is going to get your ass. You know what I mean? So my thing has always been balance. Thing has always been balance. Because if it's meant for the world to wake up and be totally healed with a psychedelic, then the whole world would have been woken up by now. That's not the case. The case is that, you know, when we deal with these teaching plants and fungi, they're tools. How do you use the tool? You know, what are you learning from your psychedelic experience? How are you bringing those teachings back to your everyday life? You know, and most people, I hate to see, man, I see this all the time. People are not, they might go on these ayahuasca journeys or whatever, because that's the new thing to do. And that's the new fad. But if your heart is not in it, if your soul is not in it, it just becomes a fad. It just becomes something fancy because everyone else is doing it right now. You know, so you have to have your heart into what you're doing, man. And if you take those experiences back to your everyday life, that's when you start to see your life improving. That's when you start to see your life enriching. You know what I mean? That's when you could be more of a tool for your community, for your nation, for the world. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I think this earthly plane, this third dimension, I really think it's just a place for our soul to learn different things. You know what I mean? It's a school, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So what are we learning while we're here, man? You know, some people, they hide behind this shit, man, because it's easy for them to do that shit. You know what I mean? It's like, I'll never forget, man, like that time when I was at UMass and I met you over there. There was this one guy, a speaker there, very well-known author. His books is in the stores and all that. And this guy, I was talking to this young man. He comes up, he interrupts us without even saying, excuse me. And he's like, oh, yeah, I liked your talk, by the way, Duli. I was like, yo, cool, thank you, you know. And then his wife comes out of nowhere and starts putting him on blast, tries to embarrass him right in front of us and says, oh, you know, and you talk about these ayahuasca things and all this. And if people would know that at home you watch these racist sitcoms and these, you know, and all going just blowing them all out right there, you know. And but the thing is, she's calling him a racist, but what you're doing is kind of racist itself because you're using me just to get at him. So my thing is this: is like we got to grow up. You know, and my thing is this: a person could go on an ayahuasca experience 1,000 times. They could have been studying this shit since the sun up, sun down. Who cares? You could be the super expert and all that, but if it's not changing you, if you're still a prick, if you're still an asshole, what the hell does that mean? He's just a person that could speak very fancy. It doesn't fucking impress me. Excuse my language.
No worries.
You know
I mean, yeah, Joe and I talk about the integration process, and like it's probably one of the most important things. I mean, how many times could you see the light, but if you're not doing anything with it, what is it? You know, like
it's like, what's the point? You know what I mean? You know, it's like integration is so important, brother. You know what I mean? Because and again, man, I think that sometimes when we deal with so-called financial people who are very financially well-to-do or whatever, maybe it's the lack of struggle in that part to say, okay, well, this is readily available for me. So maybe they take it for granted. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of people within the community where I'm at, certain people of color, I know some people would never be able to go to Peru. Just
because it's not accessible, not affordable.
Not accessible, not financial. Some of these people living straight in the projects. You know what I mean? But yet they really need it.
How do you think you could like change that? I mean, this is something that comes up often of like, you know, I always coming back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're constantly in survival mode of working, paying rent, I mean, taking off time to try to work on yourself, sometimes it's not possible, but like, how could we, I don't know, support that? Is there a way to do that?
I mean, the thing is like, for example, me and my wife wanted to go to this last ayahuasca ceremony together, but we didn't have a babysitter. And the babysitter that we usually got, she's so damn expensive. You know, I said, listen, you're going to have to go one day. I'm going to have to go the other day. So yeah, finance, like single parents, all these different things. It's deep and it's a real situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that comes into play when we talk about community. Community is so important,
It is.
you know, because that's where your support is. Because, like, for instance, like I was saying, one of my aunts was a Black Panther. When the Black Panther movement started and spread throughout the Black community, what the Black Panther movement was really standing for was just enriching and improving our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I'm not going to wait for the government or any outward type of president or anyone to save us. We're going to help our own people. So we're going to start the free breakfast program. Okay, these kids over here don't have enough to eat. We're going to make sure they're eating. We're going to donate clothes so, you know, people have some clothes. We're going to police our own community. Instead of calling the police because this guy's being abusive to his wife, she's going to call the Black Panthers. They're going to come. They're going to handle that. The guys on the street corner selling the drugs, we're going to push them out the community because we don't want that. It's about community. It's about really people coming together. And I think that when people are about what they talk about, then people could say, hey, you know, if a person has some type of wealth, invest. You know, if you know, like, hey, you want to have more people of color or more low income people to experience this medicine and really have them have these beautiful healings, let's start investing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Put your money where your mouth is. You know what I mean? Invest in these communities. Invest in community centers and stuff where they can have resources available for new methods of healing, breath work, all kinds of stuff, combo, all these different things, yoga, you name it. Have scholarships so people, low income people and people of color can be able to have scholarships so they could go out to Peru and do these things. That's how we do it. It's about community. It's about people coming together. That's where it's at.
Yeah. And are you seeing anybody within the Black community kind of, I mean, you don't need to call names out or anything like that, but seeing community to get involved to offer this within there? It was actually, we had a group of women from Boston. They knew who you were, but they were looking to just experience breath work up here in Vermont to see if they could bring this back to their community center to offer it to those communities. And man, the work that they were doing, I was just so inspired. It was just really beautiful that they wanted to create this center to make change within there and using these different tools and technologies. Like, oh man, yes, do that. That's awesome.
It's happening.
Yeah,
it's happening. Yes, there's people in my community that are doing this work. And like you said, it's happening, man. It's like 3 centers that I can think of in Boston that are doing that right now. And they're not and one of them, I'm supposed to meet with them tomorrow because they're going to try to donate some money for me so I can make it to Costa Rica, so I could be okay financially, so I can be able to come back with this information and this training so I can help my community. So it is happening. And I think there's definitely a shift in consciousness happening. You know, I could just see that from my own upbringing. You know, at one point in time in the 80s, man, there was no veggie burgers, man.
Right.
Do you know? I mean, listen, man, the shit that I used to have, the shit my father used to, God bless my father, I love him, but he tried hard. But the stuff that he used to make us to eat, man, he would make these homemade veggie burgers. It was disgusting, bro. I was like, you could imagine me going to school, man, with this shit, man. And I'd be like, oh my God, what is this? You know what I mean? So we have come a far way. Now we have Boca Burgers, Morningstar Burgers. All the people take it for granted, bro. I didn't come up like that, man. So, you know, again, like now everyone's doing yoga. You know what I mean? Like I was doing yoga stretches with my dad as a child. You know, so I see things growing. I see things changing. You know what I mean? I just hope that it just doesn't get watered down. You know what I mean? Because like even thinking about like even yoga, for instance, and when you think of yoga, it wasn't just for health. It was about spiritual enlightenment and union with God, you know? So I just hope that when it does become, when the world embraces it, I just hope it doesn't come to a place of becoming so mainstream that the essence of it is lost.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
That's a big concern I see for many people, even within the psychedelic community as well. Even when we talk about maps, for instance, there's certain people that within the community, the psychedelic community, that are against maps, that are against clinical style type of research along the lines of these psychoactive compounds. Because some people feel like the essence of the medicine man or the medicine woman or the spirit of the ikaros or the songs or all these different things, all these elements within the whole experience of that, you know, some people feel that it will just be stripped away. And now you'll just be sitting on a couch with blindfolds over your eyes and someone, a psychologist, somebody next to you, are you okay? How are you doing now? And you know what? I'm not dissing either. You know what I mean? It's a time and a place for everything. For some people, that might be totally amazing for them.
Yeah, it's really helpful sometimes for people. Yeah.
Could be very liberating. So again, you'll never catch me saying that it's just supposed to be this way or that way. But I think there should definitely be a balance.
I think there should be different models. I mean, Joe and I talk about this all the time. I mean, I think there are different contexts of use and each is somewhat appropriate. I mean, I've had recreational experiences that were deeply therapeutic and, you know, it wasn't like I need to go inside and have this internal process. So yeah, I agree that there should be somewhat different approaches, and yeah, it would be nice to not see some of this watered down as it evolves. And I think that is a concern for a lot of people in this realm of watching it becoming a little bit more mainstream and seeing what happens. And yeah,
it's a real thing, man. People say cultural appropriation. You know, it's deep, because I had one shaman that was working with us from Peru, and he talked about it. He's like, you know, there's a lot of the medicine men and women down there are tired of it, because they say, you know, these very rich white individuals come down. They say they take their culture or they take their medicine or whatever. They overharvest or take whatever they need, and they never give back to the community. That's a problem, man. You know, they shouldn't have these places dirt poor down there, and everyone is reaping the benefits, bringing this stuff back to the United States or whatever, and there's no one bringing any resources, anything back to these people. That's not right, man. And you're not respecting the people or the medicine when you do that, you know, and people got to be mindful of that, man. It's not cool, man, you know?
Yeah, medicine or food. Actually, this morning we were just having a conversation. Somebody was talking about avocados, and when they were down in a country where it produces it, they walked in like the bodega in the corner store and didn't see any, realizing that like all that just gets exported to the States, and it's like here's these people that might be staple foods, and they can't afford it or it's not part of their life anymore. So it goes into so many different areas of life, and just maybe be conscious of it.
Yeah, man, it sucks, man. We definitely gotta work on this planet. Has a lot of stuff to work on. You know what I mean? And you know, there's other civilizations beyond the stars that don't deal with money. You know, you know, and you know, this is the thing. It's not just about planet Earth, y'all. You know, and I think when people start to get deeper, even within the teaching plants and fungi, the psychedelics. When you start going deeper, you'll start to realize that this is just one little speck in the universe. And especially, I have to give credit and tip my hat to Baba Kalindi, because it was him that really inspired me to increase my dosage with even mushrooms. You know, the most I took was like 31 grams at one sitting. And when you start to go deeper, man, when you start to go more with in abundance with these teaching plans, you start to go deeper, and you start to see that things are not what we always perceive it to be. You know, and you know, I'll never forget 2 motherfucking aliens came into my bathroom. That's when I was on 25 grams, and I had some penis envies and some golden cats. And shit, I had my tiger suit, because one of my totem animals is the tiger. I put my little tiger pajamas suit on, and I sat in the tub, and I was traveling through the universe. And listen, before I started really traveling, I seen these 2 graves. I swear to God, these two grays came in, and ones with the big eyes and all that came right in the bathroom. It was like they materialized. I was like, what? I was like, oh shit, you know what I mean? I got so scared, you know, I then pulled the damn shower curtain down and all that. So they showed themselves for a second, they disappeared, but that was something else. And you know, I'm just one of those people that really not believe, but know that we're not alone, you know, and my ancestors have told me that, you know, when I think of the Dogon tribe of West Africa, of Mali, you know, they are very big in letting the world know that we're not alone. When we talk about the star nations and the star people, from the Hopi to the Zulu, all of them talk about it. But for me, when the Dogon knew about Sirius B.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, Sirius B,
yeah.
way
double binary.
Yeah, way before the invention of the telescope. Somebody out there explain to me how they knew that, Mr. Smarty Pants.
Well, I think it was really interesting because they observed like the tribes doing their ritualistic dance and realizing that it was in the same like way that, you know, Sirius B is, and they're like, how'd you know this was like, you know, you're dancing as a double binary star in some sense. They're like, well, you know, those people told us, and you know, it's, from our culture, we're like, okay, you guys are crazy, but you know.
You look at their paintings, they had a whole solar system mapped out to a T, had the rings around Saturn and all that, way before a telescope, y'all. So we have to understand there's much more to us. There's so much to us. And I think like as time goes by, we're going to have disclosure. We're going to have, you know, when I was listening to something the other day, I think it was the granddaughter of former President Eisenhower, and she's a whistleblower. There's people coming out. If we could respect our military, if we could respect our veterans that actually so-called gave their life for your country, if you could respect them going to war, why can't you respect them when they come back and tell you that they seen certain things that were very strange? You know, there's people who have gone on record and said, hey, you know, I was told not to say this or say that because my military career would have been over, or maybe my life would have been in jeopardy. But now these men and these women are speaking up now because some of them are in their deathbed and they don't want to have that on their conscience, you know? So I'll never forget, my grandfather served in World War II, and he seen a UFO come out of the water, you know, when he was on this shit, man. So there's things to us, man, that we have to really look at and understand, man. There's so much stuff, man, that has to be uncovered and revealed. And when I think of the Mahabharata, when I think of all these ancient different texts throughout the world, they're talking about star nations. They're talking about seeders of different planets and stuff like that. So this stuff is real. And when I go into some of my deep mushroom experiences or other different experiences with some of these teaching plants and fungi, I've been shown ancient memory, shit that look like straight up Star Wars, man. I ain't gonna lie to you, brother. You know what I mean? One time I was on one of these deep trips, and it was like I was in some spaceship. Like I was like the front street driver, man, and it looked like straight up Star Wars, like some big war in the sky. You know, so, you know, when we look into things like that, even into the workings of Zachariah Stitchin and others, you know, even though some people say his stuff wasn't totally accurate, but they can't deny some of them tablets over there in ancient Sumeria, you know, modern day Iraq, and them talking about, you know, a great war that happened in space, the Orion Wars and all this stuff. So, you know, something went down, you know, and I think that the way I think history goes, I don't think it's just really linear. I think we're going through cycles and cycles and cycles. And we'll continuously, it seems like we continuously make the same stupid ass mistakes every time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, because like from your viewers out there, look up Credo Mutwa. You know, he's on the African Zulu. He has a book called Zulu Shaman. You know, and he's one of the last living Sogomas or medicine men over there in South Africa that hold the oral tradition of our history. And he talks about how humans were on Mars before we came here, you know, and how it was a big war on Mars. you know? So everything goes in a big circle. You know, we got Elon Musk and the rest of them saying they want to live on Mars now and die on Mars.
I think they actually just found some water underground on Mars
they
recently.
Just find some water on Mars. So this is going to be very interesting, my friend, our future, because, you know, what goes around comes around. And NASA, you know, there's the so-called, some people say it was a cover-up or whatever, but some people say, hey, the pyramids that they have on Mars, the face on Mars. I think a lot of that, we might see some real clear new pictures, footage, when these billionaires go in their privatized rockets, because NASA, those who work for NASA, they have their own agenda. They have their own people they have to serve. And when you have some of these billionaires where they don't have to serve anyone, you're going to see a lot of new pictures and footage, my friends, and it's going to blow our fucking mind.
Man, yeah, it's getting weird out there. There's so much there. But I realize that we're definitely over an hour at this point, so we should probably start wrapping up. And I know we probably have a lot more to talk about with like some of the other work you do with like
talk about that bufo, that toad medicine,
and
that combo too.
Yeah, we'll have you back on and we'll chat more about that work. I know the hour goes by so quick.
Real quick, man.
Yeah,
wow,
it goes by really quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, any last words or anything that you want to toss out there, places where people can find you, or just, you know, anything you want to wrap up with?
I'm not a big technological person. You could always find me on Facebook under Abdul K. Wilkins. Also, I have a couple of videos out on YouTube under, I think my wife set it up a page for me called the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. You could subscribe to that. And and if you want to also email me, you could also email me at, what's my email? lovemotherearth33@gmail.com. lovemotherearth33@gmail.com. Yeah, just reach out to me. I in September, I'm supposed to be going to Costa Rica to get certified with this combo for the East Coast or even different places. For the future, I'll definitely be traveling to do combo ceremonies with people. So you could look forward to that in the future with me.
Yeah, it'd be cool to catch up after you come back from that and see how that goes and see some things that you've learned.
Yeah, and also brother Jason Quitt, for those who don't know who he is, he's great in the UFOlogy community and stuff, and he's a great author. He has several good books, but I worked with 2 good books with him on the Egyptian postures of power. Great guy to look up. He wants me to be in this new documentary that he wants to do with me, so that might be coming up soon, and I would definitely like to talk about the Egyptian postures of power, Egyptian Qigong or Kemetic Qigong, because all those things are so powerful. But last words, just people out there, love yourself, man. Don't be so hard on yourself out there. Every day you might stumble, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, keep on working on yourself, keep on developing that heart chakra. Love is the key right there, brother. You know, so that's, if anything, that's something I really want to bring out to the world out there. Everything's going to be all right, especially from that bufo experience. Yeah. I ain't have nothing, man. Everything's going to be okay, my friends.
Pure love.
So that vibration high. Of course, they're going to, you know, every empire must fall. There's always going to be different paradigms. And we're coming to the close of this paradigm, and we're about to go into something beautiful. So let's keep on loving each other, keep on spreading that love to each other, man. And peace out. Thank you for listening.
Awesome.
I appreciate
Thanks so much, Duli. It was a great pleasure.
Hey, no doubt, man. Y'all take care. All right.